Welcome to episode 71 of Driver's Seat Blog Radio. As always, I'm your host, David G. Firestone. I feel stupid doing this, but I was paying attention to too many things at once, and I accidentally labeled last week's episode as 71 as opposed to 70. I've since gone and made that correction, and I'm sorry. And I've also been struggling over whether or not I should do this episode this week because after I finished and posted last week's episode, a coworker I really liked suddenly passed away. And then the next day we had to send our beagle Lucy across the Rainbow Bridge. I've been really bummed out over the last few days, but I've decided to forge ahead, and we'll start this episode with some news. First, we start with the Miami Grand Prix. It's come out in recent weeks that Miami is currently in talks to make the race a night race. Now, I think this is a good move for several reasons. First, in the U.S., you could have a much bigger television audience without competition from NASCAR, IndyCar, and the NHRA. Second off, since Miami is located in the hellhole that is Florida, nights are cooler, which is not only better for fans, but the track will have more grip. And if they do this, I hope they do a Saturday night race, because I'm not sold on a Sunday night race for Formula One, but I hope it happens since that is the best option. So now I'm going to talk about the 2023 NASCAR All-Star Race. Craft Family Distillers is a craft distillery in North Carolina, and they're the official moonshine of North Wilkesboro Speedway. They will also be making the trophies for the All-Star race. Now, to quote J-Ski, link in the description, quote, "The custom-built Cal Family Distributors Moonshine still trophies will be some of the most sought-after items during NASCAR All-Star Race Week. Growing larger for each race of the week and culminating in a trophy that has been said will take two people to carry for the NASCAR All-Star Race winner, the replica premium copper moonshine still layout will be attached to a wide wooden base. Corresponding event logos will be branded onto the replica copper stills to give each trophy its own unique authenticity." Now, I've said before that I like moonshine. I like the idea of NASCAR having an official moonshine. And I like the idea of the moonshine trophy because the pictures they've shown, it looks really good. I like unique trophies that have a connection to the race and to the speedway around them. And again, this is another good move that I think should have been done a lot sooner. Okay, so I have to bash the Chicago Street Race again because it's just, they're making decisions that I just don't get. Now, the first one they actually did was actually a smart move because they're going to be closing a lot of streets in the days prior to the race. They're going to be starting on June 26th and continue till June 30th. These are actually very busy streets, and as somebody has worked in downtown Chicago at various points, I can tell you that this is going to cause a lot of havoc when it comes to traffic. I mean, it's a necessary evil. But the other announcement that just threw me through a loop is that the race is adjacent to the museum campus. And there are three museums. There's the Field Museum, the Shedd Aquarium, and the Adler Planetarium. The Shedd Aquarium is making the right move and just closing for the entire week, for reasons I'll get into momentarily. But the Adler Planetarium and the Field Museum will open. The planetarium will be open for normal hours, but the Field Museum will have what they're calling reduced hours. But I don't know why either one of these museums would be open for visitors. Number one, given that most of the area around them is going to be closed, it's going to factor in because the traffic issues are going to keep people away from the downtown area while the race is going on. Also, I'm willing to wager a lot that the operation of the museum is going to be at a loss for the weekend since the costs involved are much more than what they're going to bring in as such. Again, not as many people in the downtown area. It's the noise is going to affect the experience. I think, from a realistic perspective, the only move is to just close for the weekend. Save the time and effort. Now, our last story discusses something I previously discussed. I use the word discuss too many times, but so during episode 41, I discussed the Lake Erie Walleye Trail Tournament scandal. And for those who missed it, and for those of you who don't understand what I'm talking about, I'll explain what happened. In October, two fishermen, Jacob Runyon and Chase Comiskey, entered into a walleye catching tournament, and they decided it would be a good idea to bring their own pre-caught fish and stuff them with lead weights and walleye fillets to win the tournament, which they would have had the judge been as dumb as they were. But unfortunately, these judges in professional competitions tend to be able to see cheating for what it is, and they were quickly caught, and the video went viral. Well, they're pretty much now persona non grata at any fishing tournament for the rest of their lives. But they were indicted on felony charges, which included cheating, attempted grand theft, and possessing criminal tools, and misdemeanor charges of unlawfully owning wild animals. So that, again, took place in October. At the end of March, the two cheaters struck plea deals with authorities. And as a result of this plea deal, the two fishermen, again, Jacob Runyon and Chase Comiskey, will spend 10 days in jail. They will lose their fishing licenses for 3 years and are forfeiting a $100,000 bass boat. You know what I say? Good. Good. You got caught cheating, and now the one thing that you thought you were the best at has been taken away from you. You can't be in tournaments. You can't recreationally fish. Your reputations are ruined, and you have nobody to blame but yourselves. I mean, did they really think they were going to get away with it? Do these idiots not understand that if you're an official at a competition, you need to understand that some people are going to cheat, and that you can figure out the ways that they can cheat? It boggles the mind. This had no chance of succeeding, and the way they got caught is hilarious. Watch the video. I can't show it here for copyright, but it's hilarious. Okay, so after our first break, I'm going to discuss a rabbit hole that I went down the other week. Welcome back. Sometimes you look up something, some random trivia, and it just takes you down this really weird rabbit hole where you learn so much more about the weird shit in the world around you that you wouldn't have learned otherwise. Well, I went down one of these rabbit holes a few weeks ago. I did some research on this. It was supposed to be a very simple thing, but it ended up just ballooning, and I have to talk about this. Now, I live in Illinois, and I'm relatively close to the Wisconsin border. Wisconsin is known for their dairy production. Hell, the state is even nicknamed America's Dairyland. They take their dairy very seriously in Wisconsin, so much so that the state has some very specific laws about margarine and an odd legal history. And I heard about this and I had to look it up, and it's just, folks, wait till you get a load of this. To quote the state of Wisconsin's own words, this is by the way on the Wisconsin government website, link in the description. For the purposes of this section, oleomargarine or margarine includes oleomargarine, margarine, butterine, I've never heard of that, and other similar substances, fats, and fat compounds sufficiently adaptable to the ordinary uses of butter to lead readily to use as an alternative to butter. But this section shall not apply to lard, cream cheese, cheese food compounds, nor any other dairy product made exclusively of cow's milk, or milk solids with or without added vitamins. If such product is sold or distributed in such a manner and form, will clearly distinguish it from butter. Nor shall this section apply to shortenings not churned or emulsified in milk or cream or having a melting point above 112 degrees Fahrenheit, or more determined by the capillary tube method, unless there is sold or given away with such shortening any compound with, when mixed with such shortening, makes oleomargarine, butterine, or similar substances. Colored oleomargarine or colored margarine is oleomargarine or margarine having a tint or shade containing more than 6/10 degrees of yellow or yellow and red collectively, but with an excess of yellow over red, as measured in terms of Lovibond tintometer scales or its equivalent. I've never heard of a Lovibond tintometer. No person shall sell, offer, or expose for sale at any retail any oleomargarine or margarine unless such oleomargarine or margarine is packaged. The net weight of the contents of any package sold in a retail establishment is 1 pound. There appears on the label or package the word oleomargarine or margarine in type or lettering at least as large as any other type or lettering on the label, in a color or print which is clearly contrasted with its background, and a full accurate statement of the ingredients contained in oleomargarine or margarine. And each part of the contents of the package is contained in a wrapper or separate container which bears the word oleomargarine or margarine in type lettering not smaller than 20-point type. The serving of colored oleomargarine or margarine at a public eating place as a substitute for butter is prohibited unless ordered by the customer. The serving of oleomargarine to students, patients, or inmates of any state institution as a substitute for table butter is prohibited, except that such substitution may be ordered by the institution's superintendent when necessary for the health of a specific patient or inmate, if directed by the physician in charge of the patient or inmate. Any person who violates any provision of this section may be fined not less than $100 nor more than $500, or imprisoned for not more than 3 months or both, and for each substitute offense it may be fined not less than $500 no more than $1,000, and may not be imprisoned in the county jail not less than 6 months, not more than a year. So basically, if you're a repeat offender of giving somebody margarine, you could go to jail in Wisconsin for 6 months to a year and pay a $1,000 fine. I will talk about that in a few minutes. And it sounds crazy enough, but this is actually the toned down version of a law that was crafted in 1895. Basically, the law in its original form made selling yellow margarine in Wisconsin illegal, and a lot of other states also had similar bans. Now, you could buy margarine, but it was white and not yellow. There was an extra tax on it, which not only made it unattractive, but made it cost more. Now, I know what you're thinking. Couldn't you just go to another state and buy margarine and bring it back in to Wisconsin? You were allowed to do that, provided you purchased a $1 license and you paid a 6-cent tax for every pound brought into the state. Now, I read an article about this on the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. I'll link in the description. I'm going to bring up some highlights from this little article because I wish I was making this up. If I could make something like this up, I'd be a hell of a lot richer than I am right now. In 1954, Appleton Sheriff Lyman B. Clark was accused of smuggling margarine into the jail for the inmates. He was found guilty and fined $50 or $563.87 adjusted for inflation. Though he protested his innocence, he didn't seek re-election thereafter. 1958. The American Soybean Association called the state's taxes and ban a quote-unquote yellow curtain. One of their spokesmen would later state that, quote, it is an open secret that Wisconsin citizens travel across state lines into Illinois and Iowa to purchase yellow margarine, and that the state has inspectors at their border to detect violators. This certainly smacks of police state methods. So, busting people who are breaking the law, or who are openly breaking a law, is a police state. Okay. Let's just take a second and enjoy that bit of thought. So in 1963, during a debate on revoking the ban, a state representative stated that 32 tons of margarine was being bootlegged into Wisconsin on a weekly basis due to the ban and the taxes. Now we're going to bring in one of our weirder entities in this story. Republican State Senator Gordon Rosleip. Roscleip. Now this man loved him some butter. He was a staunch supporter of the ban and taxes. So during June Dairy Month in 1965, he was given a taste test. He was given a sample of real butter and a sample of margarine and was asked to pick which one was butter. He incorrectly stated that the margarine he was given was the real butter. Now, although this sounds stupid, there actually is a plausible explanation as to what happened. His family had actually been bootlegging colored margarine into Wisconsin as part of a plan to help him control his weight. Thing is, they never clued him in on this. So he honestly thought that he was eating butter when he was actually eating margarine. So 1 year later, in 1966, the Wisconsin State Assembly approved a ban legalizing colored margarine and eliminating the taxes. And Assembly Leader Frank Nicolay stated, quote, this measure would crucify the family-sized farmer on a cross of oleomargarine. I don't think a cross made of margarine would support a man's weight or even a baby's weight, but no. So we meet Gordon Rosleip a second time because in 1967, with the signing of the bill banning oleomargarine, lifting the ban passing, Gordon Rosleip was not going to back down. He was going to die on a hill of butter and make a last stand in the legislature. And in his last stand, he said, quote, why did God Almighty manufacture butter? To build good bodies for the future of this nation. This oleo isn't the true stuff. Don't kid yourself. Well, not long thereafter, Governor Warren Knowles signed the measure that ended the ban on colored margarine. Since women's groups were very heavily involved in getting the ban lifted, the governor had 10 women, his wife included, dressed in margarine yellow clothing, which is, it's even funnier to think about as I'm reading this. He had 10 women in yellow margarine colored clothing there at the bill signing. Now, I talked about the fines and penalties that could surround the serving of margarine in certain places. Here's the thing. The ban isn't enforced. It's like you're not supposed to, but no one really cares if you do. It's not even a real issue. And even with that, there were opportunities to get rid of the law, but it's still on the books. And I found this whole rabbit hole very entertaining, very interesting, and it was fun to go down. After our second break, I'm going to discuss a case that happened in my home state that really pissed me off. And we're back. I didn't hear about this case until very recently, but the more I read about it, the more it just makes my blood boil. Because this is the type of attitude people have in this day and age, and I just don't understand this. We're going to discuss the Stephanie Melgoza case for a few minutes. It infuriated me for a number of reasons, but let's talk about the facts of the case before we get into my personal rage. Stephanie Melgoza decided it would be a good idea to drive with a blood alcohol content of 0.264, 3 times the legal limit after leaving a party. She apparently, by her own admission, had 4 vodka drinks, and there was a open bottle of vodka in her car. Now, she ended up causing an accident that killed 2 people quite horrifically. When the police arrived and were investigating, she was joking, kidding around, and nonchalantly acting like nothing serious happened. The arresting officer was in such disbelief that he says, as he's arresting her, "You're on body camera being completely careless about killing 2 people tonight. You could care less. That's just sad, pathetic, and horrible at the same time." Her whole response to this was she basically had the rich white woman attitude, like, yeah, I'm a rich white woman, I'm in a good college, nothing bad's really going to happen to me. Then, as they get to, as they're in the DUI area waiting for the test to be conducted, she was talking about how she's going to Las Vegas soon, and literally says, "I'm going to start off with 2 Long Islands, it's going to be so much fun." The officer, who's almost too stunned to speak at this point, goes, "You haven't had enough of drinking already?" Her response, while laughing, mind you, was, "We're talking Vegas. There's no limit in Vegas, right?" Well, as it turned out, her actions didn't have consequences. Her actions did have consequences. I shouldn't have said didn't. Her actions had consequences. She was arrested, charged, and sentenced to 14 years in prison for killing 2 people in a horrific manner while driving drunk. Driving drunk is one of the dumbest things you could possibly do as a person. Also, at her at her college that she thought was going to get her out of trouble, they wouldn't let her attend graduation, though she did technically earn her diploma, but she didn't get to walk the aisle. Bradley University has distanced themselves from her, and that's a good move. But her actions and her attitude at the time of the accident were repugnant, to say the least. When she was in court, oh, it was such a different story. She had a much different tone. She was sad and remorseful and felt bad for her actions and apologized to the victims' families. But the video of her arrest was damning, to say the least. And as it turns out, the apple doesn't rot too far from the tree, because her father started lashing out on Facebook against the online trolls who were blasting them. He thought his comments would stop these posts, but it didn't, and his post has subsequently been taken down. And the father doesn't seem to get it, so allow me. You brought her into the world. You raised her for 18 of the 24 years she has been on this planet. Her bad behavior and deplorable attitude reflects on you as a dad. And contrary to what a lot of people think, it is absolutely acceptable, if not justifiable, to blame the parents if their child is an asshole. Because more often than not, the parents are at fault. Most times, the bad behaviors that are allowed to foster are either accepted by the parents, whether it be willingly accepting it or not doing anything to punish it. Now, this guy is also a football coach, and I think most of my American friends can see fans and friends can see the connection here. But for those of you who don't know why a football coach is a bad thing, they're basically the people at the school who are fostering the "I play sports, so I'm better than you" attitude that athletes have. And I'm willing to bet that his attitude and the way he raised her contributed to her acting the way that she did. You raised this child, you brought her into the world, you are responsible for her for the first 18 years of her life. You have to accept the fact that she's a terrible person. You have to accept the fact that people are blaming you because, again, she's your child, you raised her. And he has to accept that he raised a bad kid. And if you watch the video, you understand that it's not just a case of one or two comments. She was acting like a brat the entire time. I hope she serves out her entire sentences, and I hope some bad things happen to her in prison. She's where she belongs, and now her father has to accept her for the train wreck that he's raised. And I'm telling you this right now. If I was in the dad's position, I wouldn't be lashing out at the trolls. I would never speak to her again. I wouldn't accept her calls from prison. I wouldn't go visit her. I wouldn't write her letters. If she wrote me a letter, I wouldn't read it. I would just cut ties. You're an embarrassment to the family. You deserve to be in prison. With that, episode 71 of Driver Suit Blog Radio crosses the finish line. Got some good stuff planned for next week. I'm Dave Fosley. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you then.